Welcome to the Bucket Plan on Demand, a podcast for financial advisors based on the best-selling book and process that simplifies financial planning. Hear from skilled industry professionals and special guests each episode that will help perfect your approach with clients and your results.
I'm Kirsten Schlumbohm, Vice President and Head of Annuity Sales. I am extremely excited to have Jeannette Bajalia on with us today. She's one of my fan favorites and one of my favorites too. Jeannette Bajalia is a senior wealth manager at J.L. Smith with nearly 2 decades of experience. Actually, it sounds like a little bit more on our pre-conversation. Specializing in elder care and life transition planning, particularly for women, lifestyle planning for women. She is the founder of Women's Worth and Bucket Plan Certified, known for her holistic approach to wealth management. She is a published author, sought-after speaker, and she is very passionate about empowering women to take control of their financial futures. And just a side note, the 4th edition of Wise Up Women has launched, and I'm super excited to get a copy of that. So Jeannette, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kirsten. Appreciate it. And thank you for allowing me to talk about one of my passions.
Well, I will listen to you any day and I'll tune in. Today, we're going to talk about financial planning after gray divorce. But before we get into the questions, Jeannette, do you mind sharing and giving us the why and the definition of gray divorce? I feel like we might know, but we may have some misconceptions.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really important to lay a foundation because of the trends we've been seeing in the last decade. Gray divorce is essentially divorce amongst individuals over 50 years old. And this is after long-term marriages, and then they get divorced at 50. And the family practice in the legal industry, they coined this gray divorce term because it imposes unique challenges on finances. Just to show you the magnitude of the growth in gray divorce, in 1990, about 8.7% of marriages of individuals over 50 ended up in divorce. And by 2019, that is 36% of marriages. So basically, and we're seeing now divorces in the 65 age group. This is the only age group where divorces rates are growing. All the other age groups, we're seeing a reduction in divorce rates. And so people tend to say, why is this happening? And we're seeing a lot of research because I do a lot of research. I researched it before I did the 4th edition of the book. And basically, there's a 5 key reasons for why people after long-term marriages over 50, now we're seeing more over 60. It's basically the empty nest syndrome at that life stage. And then all of a sudden, you see couples realizing they don't have that much in common. What was in common are off to college or out on their own. That's one of the real key issues. And the others are financial issues. The research is suggesting, the Pew studies and all the research are suggesting that the closer that couples get to those golden retirement years, the more financial conflicts occur. Money issues become more relevant, and there's disagreements on how money matters are handled. So it tends to put more stress on relationships. And then as we get older, obviously there's chronic health issues that rear their heads, and that poses more pressure that results in individuals growing apart. So basically we're seeing all these realities of being in a relationship with the reality of changing societal norms and expectations, because no longer is marriage for convenience. It is, am I happy? Do I want to continue the rest of my life this way? And what we're seeing is a majority of these gray divorces are initiated by women.
So how is this impacting the financial lives of retirees? Because you've built a life together, you've been married for 40 years, and now you're dividing up the household assets. How does this impact? Because it's, we could still live for 25, 30 years after age 60.
And that's true. That is one of the reasons women tend to live longer. And so they're going, oh, wow, do I want to see the next 20, 30, 40 years? So obviously they're initiating a change in their lifestyle. But the financial impacts are very severe because in many states, it is just black and white. Community property, you have to split assets. I know I had a couple, they had a 51-year marriage. And if they're in their early 70s, they decided to separate. And then they decided to divorce. And so when you see the impacts, the financial impacts of couples divorcing at that life stage, neither one's going to have a highly successful retirement journey without more active, more aggressive, more tiered levels of financial planning, and for them to continue saving during their retirement journey to try to compensate for the losses, the financial losses when you split assets.
What should advisors keep in mind when balancing hard financial truths? Because it's hard. I mean, my parents have been married over 60 years and they are physically separated. So we've got a lot of managing to do behind the scenes. So, what should we keep in mind when balancing the hard truths and the emotional sensitivity during the divorce planning?
I think the first and foremost is a sensitivity towards the way we deal with these situations, because there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of bitterness, there's a lot of emotional issues. So it's not like we can drive into the bucket planning process immediately where, okay, we're in step one of the bucket planning process. That connecting at an emotional, more intimate level may take a heck of a lot longer than an hour and a half meeting. We have to give the individuals, whether they're men and women, because there are men who are struggling with this latter life stage divorce as well. We have to give them the opportunity to express their fears, more importantly, because you know what? We can't fake it. There's realities of running projections are not what this is about. In dealing with these latter life stage divorces, and you've got limited assets, you can't just get quick to the decisions, because many of the financial discussions, and the reality is, if one is getting alimony, for instance, they have to save a portion of that alimony to recover from the loss of the financial assets, especially women, because of longevity. And because women utilize more the medical expenses in our nation, and women, 75% of nursing home residents are women, and continuing care retirement communities are women. So who's going to pay for that? So the realities is, our traditional financial planning models are not totally appropriate for people in this life situation.
When we were talking earlier, you mentioned you have to create a space for grief, because a lot of times, if you've been married to somebody for 40, 50 years, it's almost like having a death in the family when you separate and have a divorce at that age, because your life has been centered around them. So I love the way that you create the space for grief, whether it's male or female, to help them get to a place to have this conversation, because it is a really hard conversation to have. So how can advisors help clients prioritize both short-term stability and long-term financial security after a divorce?
Well, I think it's patience. When we're engaged in the financial planning discussion, and we're going through the planning process, the holistic planning process, we're going through that. It's not a quick process because of those emotions, because of the grief, because of the anger, because of they haven't let go of the past. So you can't get them through that process very quickly. So financial advisors need to exercise an inordinate amount of patience, a lot of patience, because we can't get them from step one to deliver and get that buy decision for them to become, have us be their trusted partner with quickly. It's not going to happen, particularly if they're just new out of that divorce. So I would highly recommend that we just use a more simplistic financial planning process and not focus on rates of return and the data. Focus on life stage planning, and we got to rebuild your financial plan for each life stage. And then we may not be able to help them, because I know many advisors put a minimum investable assets. Now we're seeing a lot of advisors go to the $1 million. And I'm thinking, you've got a lot of these people walking out of these divorces with $500 to $750,000 up to $1 million. You can still work effectively with the right planning process, with the right way you deliver data to them. It's information on the cost of your lifestyle, not a rate of return or a sequence of returns risk if you don't do what I kind of suggest you do in this bucket plan. I just really modify that those bucket plan deliverables extensively because I want to speak to, I don't violate the process, I don't deviate from the process, but I speak to what's relevant to the person sitting across from me. And that is, how do I protect my future? And how do I make sure I'm not a burden on my kids?
So after you navigate the emotional side of things, how do you help the client prioritize? Because it's a lot. You take away the emotional, now we get down to the nitty-gritty, their goals, and their future. How do you prioritize their short-term stability and long-term financial security? Like
I have a moment of truth and get real with your expenses. Because let's face it, if you've been in a long-term marriage, and particularly women have been stay-at-home moms, or they haven't been the primary breadwinner, they don't know the impact of their spending on the household finances. So we have to have, phase one for me is cash flow management. It's basically having them come to terms with how they spend money, because we can't deal with how to invest money if we don't understand those operational influences and how they manage their day-to-day finances. So you tend to see a lot of discretionary spending that needs to be redirected to savings. And I know in my book, I give an example of, hey, ladies, we're so good at going and buying the latest and greatest sale. If shoes are on sale, we don't buy one, we buy two. When you get that receipt and it says you saved $75, I want you to go and put $75 in a money market account. And I want you to go save that money, because we tend to overspend. So when it comes to financial planning after divorce, you have to redirect your personal behaviors into, all right, step one is let's get real with our cash flow. Let's get real with what is necessity type of spending versus discretionary type of spending. Anything that's discretionary, can I redirect 50% of that into this poor $250,000 you got? So basically, it's coming to terms with that. And then education. Educate. It's so important to educate on financial concepts, because women are not going to tell us they don't understand what we're talking about. They're just not going to do it, especially if that guy's sitting across the table from them. We're not going to show our vulnerability with our financial intellect, because it's just not sophisticated. We weren't socialized to be totally left brain. So we have to find ways that educate them in the manner that they want to be educated in.
So as a shoe addict, what I should do every time I don't buy a pair of shoes is throw that money into a money market.
Yeah, that's what you should do.
That's what I should do. I've got some great comments in the chat. Grace wanted to say thank you for sharing the statistics, Jeannette. The attorneys win and the losses are to the family. Divorce clients I'm working with right now were initiated by the husband. And the hardest part is helping the woman redefine her golden years. So you're right. It takes a while to build the trust with the people who are going through it. So thank you for that. And then Joe said, more than just assets, they need to build confidence, community, and hold on to long-term relationships. They need a strong support network. And that's what I'm hearing you say, to build the trust before we get to the planning stage. Joe nailed it. So as tough as they may be, depending on the circumstances, what are the benefits of introducing life planning or value-based conversation into the financial planning process post-divorce?
The value of it is that speaks the language of women. We speak, how do I protect my lifestyle? And if you give me a plan that tells me how much to save, I'll give you a perfect example. A woman who was in Georgia she got hold of one of my books, and then she called in for an appointment, and she raised 4 daughters. She was the primary breadwinner in the relationship, and she raised 4 daughters. And she says, my husband is the spender, I'm the saver. And she had a small thrift savings plan that was about $225,000. And she says, I've got to get rid of him. I said, well, I got news for you. If you do that, you got to figure this out. And because you're very close to retirement and you need to figure this all out. I said, look, I gave her some tools. I gave her some strategies for how to save. I gave her some strategies for how to, high level, how to invest in her thrift savings plan. And I said, come back and see me when you have $500,000. And so I got a call 2 years later. She had doubled her savings because we empowered her with the simple ways to save and invest. I didn't enamor her with investment models or anything. It was just really simple. And she came back and she says, I said, well, how did you save this? It's only been 2 years since I saw you last. And she said, well, first of all, now this, I'm not recommending this. She says, well, first of all, my last daughter graduated from college and I started redirecting what I was giving her to spend into my savings. And I got rid of my husband and we signed a deal where I gave him the house and I took my financial assets. That was a very wise move because women get caught up in, I want the house, but the house is an expense. And based on the kind of house it is, it's an enormous expense. She made the right decision. She kept the financial assets because she said, I can get into a lower cost housing situation. Very wise woman. And that's what I encourage people to do. We had the tough conversations as I can't help you. I'm not going to take, your, few $100,000. I want you to go do this. And she did it. And she's got a very, very successful retirement future in her. I mean, I just am so proud of her. She's my poster person.
Well, this kind of leads me into something you and I have spoken about, we were talking about before the coffee break started, is that women tend to be sophisticated in other areas, but they've taken a backseat in the financial planning. So with your focus on women clients, what should all advisors know, regardless of their male advisor or female advisor, about divorce and how it uniquely affects women's retirement readiness?
I think one of the things that I'd recommend advisors is go meet with a couple family practice attorneys and have them educate you. Because I learned a lot from family practice attorneys that I'm in partnership with. And it gives you an opportunity to build a center of influence where you might be able to get referrals. And there's different types of family practice attorneys. I went to one who specializes with women. She's got the Florida Women's Law Group, and she only focuses and helps women. And she educated me on what are some of the issues. And she helped me understand what some of the financial concerns of women are that I built into my planning processes. So that's the first things for advisors is educate yourself on and make yourself available because family practice attorneys are making decisions that are impacting your potential and prospective clients significantly. Like, do I get a lump sum payment or do I get monthly alimony for 10 years? And then what's the impact on Social Security? I bring value to family practice attorneys by giving them some of those fancy financial planning tools we use can help attorneys make the right fact-based decisions and get the emotions out of the way and get, value added benefits for their clients. That's the first thing. And the second thing is don't exaggerate or underestimate how we women don't speak your language, the same language. We just don't speak it. We're totally right brains, and people are speaking to me. I mean, I do what I do because I interviewed 5 financial advisors when I retired, and they weren't even speaking my language. I'm thinking, I don't even know what you're talking about. I wasn't a financial advisor. I came out of the corporate world. And they didn't even want to hear that I didn't know because they look at you like you're stupid. We're not stupid. We just are not socialized that way. And I just encourage advisors to be sensitive to the fact that women are vulnerable in this space and allow them to be vulnerable. And to the extent to which you can bring a a paraplanner that's a female to partner with you, because women might be able to see something in the relationship that, in the advisor client relationship, that you might not see. I work with some of the greatest financial advisors at JL Smith. But when I sit in meetings with them, I can zero in on, oh, wait a minute, your most important priority is your special needs son. I am not going to drive into the financial discussion without understanding what we want to do for that son, because that's two tiers of plans that we need. We need a plan, multi-generational plan for the special needs son, and then we need a plan for the woman. And the extent to which we can see what the real fears are when I'm not here, who's going to take care of my son?
And
so I think those are the things that I highly encourage us to be more sensitive to.
You started going down the pathway of communication. Can you give us examples of how to better our communication styles with women, and what, instead of saying this, say that, or just some hints? Because I believe we all can get on the same page and come to the table that that the ladies want to have set for them. But what kind of coaching would you give on say this versus that?
Yeah, I did that when I created Women's Worth and I was training female advisors. I have a old language, new language. Like instead of a financial plan, it's a life plan, because that's for women. That's what it is. So you want to restrange it. Life plan is more inclusive. It's inclusive of the financial element, but it's also inclusive of the healthcare planning protection, because that's what most women are concerned about. Healthcare costs in latter life stages and not being a burden. The other language is, instead of talking about sequence of returns risk, that is one of the biggest things that just doesn't resonate with a lot of women. Can we talk about, if you pull more money out than your money's making, what do you think is going to happen? So reframing our language to giving examples of concepts that we're presenting to them. That's why bucket plan is good for women, but not, I don't have to talk about the specific tools I put in the bucket plan. All I talk about is lifestyle protection through that bucket plan. And look, we're going to protect you for what you need now. We're going to protect you for what we believe you're going to need in 10 years. And I know you're concerned about latter life stage, and you know that your later bucket is going to grow assets for your long-term care or for your children, because you want to leave money. So it's reframing our financial concepts into life realities with women.
It's creating a word picture that resonates with them. It doesn't have to be the technical, but it's creating that word picture that they can feel vulnerable and move forward with you. And even Lisa Shanae mentions in the chat, she's like, for male advisors, don't be afraid to bring a female advisor to help. She herself went through a great divorce, and it took 6 meetings with Mr. Parsons to become a client. And after that, that's when she knew she wanted to be a financial advisor and help other women like herself. So who knows who you might inspire by helping them. And then without a doubt, Kathy said, acknowledging the brain fog, divorce grief that creates open opportunities for education moments. That's so important. It's again, going back to allowing the client to be vulnerable, whether it's a male or female. It's hard for everybody to go through a divorce. So really some great insights in the chat. And as we start landing this plane, Jeannette, I probably could talk to you all day. I mean, we have great conversations. What's the mindset or the strategy you hope advisors watching or listening today walk away with to bring into working with their clients navigating the great divorce?
Well, now I'll put my business hat on. The greatest mindset is the opportunity that's out there to really do what we do best, and that's serve families, help individuals, and help families. That, to me, is the biggest mindset. Shift our mindset from they are not a transaction. It's not more production. It's how can I help this individual rebuild? So it's more of an emotional mindset to put into this space. And then redefining your planning processes and accepting the fact that it may take 5 or 6 or 7 meetings, or it could be 2 years. I've got individuals coming back to me 2 and 3 years later when I didn't convert them, because I left that lasting sense of care and compassion. That's real key, is bringing into this relationships some compassion. And I'll just can I just throw in one story real quickly?
Absolutely.
We just recently converted a high net worth client. Right now, she has $4.5 million to invest, but selling a lot of properties. And she Googled female advisor in Orlando. And of course, I came up because I've been promoting, my books and articles and what have you. And so she called, and I was the fifth financial advisors that she had interviewed. One got hold of her and took her entire $775,000 IRA. That's all she has in her $4.5 million, and put it in a real lousy annuity that wasn't even an income annuity. Took all her 401k. And then she called me and said, I've never worked with an advisor. I tried with one and I've talked to others, and I don't like the way they talk to me. And so I started just getting to know her and just really understanding what her needs are. Her top priority was a retirement plan for her disabled son. And it took me almost a year to get her into our pipeline. I was cultivating a relationship with her. I would drip on her. I'd call and say, how's Connor? The focus was on Connor because her whole life situation was her son, her disabled son. So she's a client now because of care, compassion, and because of my persistence in reaching out to her and sending her the bucket plan white paper, sending her white papers because she was just overwhelmed in the financial space. And then she has now become a client, but all my discussions, if I want to thank her, or when we gave her, for her birthdays or what have you, it's at a restaurant that her son likes to eat at. It's not her. So really getting intimately to understand what is it that drives them, what motivates them, because it's not just the money. My mantra with Women's Words is more than the money. It's about total well-being. And for women, well-being is defined very broadly. Sorry, I rambled. Just interrupt me.
You're okay. We actually have a question from the audience. Mike would like to know, if you're a male advisor and you don't have a female advisor in the firm, what's the best way to break the ice and find a female advisor that fits your firm and helps more clients?
Well, I think the best way, my experience in the past, I'm a senior wealth manager with J.L. Smith, but I had my own firm and I grew. I brought in paraplanners. I brought in client service, groomed them to be paraplanners, groomed the paraplanners to be. So the advisor hierarchy with regard to getting someone to sit by you. And as a paraplanner, the key is not to bring them at the table with you at all phases, not just for you to meet alone and then hand off paraplanner. Have the paraplanner partner with you in every single interface with your prospective client, and then move them into an advisor, because you may go through a couple paraplanners, but you'll know pretty early into the paraplanning process what their appetite is. And I highly recommend you go that route to really understand, because my friends, I love working with men, but there is $74 trillion of wealth out there, and the majority of it is going to be handed off to women. The question for you is, are you prepared to go to market to appeal to that underserved audience? It's still underserved.
Jeannette, thank you so much for being here. My biggest takeaway from what you said is be compassionate. It's not about what you say at times, it's about how you make them feel. So be vulnerable, allow them to be vulnerable and have those conversations. But thank you for being an inspiration. Thank you for being here. Jeannette's book is now available online. Here, if you've got questions from today, let us know. And whatever you do today, think about how you act and how you make others feel. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bucket Plan on Demand, brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Subscribe today for the latest episodes and insights. Visit c2penterprises.com to learn how we can help support and enhance your advisory business. At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include options and projections of C2P, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.